Live from the Clarity from Chaos studios, heard worldwide, it's Dave Campbell. On every episode, Dave and his guests explore, discuss, and work on solutions to some of life's biggest challenges. So, if you're ready, be prepared to be enlightened, amused, and even shocked by what you hear. And now, the real, the authentic, the one and only Dave Campbell.
Welcome, everyone, to Clarity from Chaos. I'm your host, Dave Campbell. Thanks so much for making us part of your day. We have a great topic on this episode of Clarity. We're going to be discussing the state of disgrace in our politicians, specifically Mr. Eric Swalwell. But first, I want to remind everybody that we are in the 250th year of our republic, and it would seem to me that we have allowed a very small group or groups tear us apart. Marxism is on the rise. Just look around recently at the elected politicians in Virginia, New York, and Washington. We elect politicians now who are only interested in their own well-being, not in the country. We have a state of the media which is controlled by 6 CEOs, and this controls all of the visual, social, and print that you see in our country. The only holdouts are a few cable outlets and the internet. We have allowed a religion to be driven out of our forefront of our culture, and unless we belong to what the group thinks, we get canceled. It kind of reminds me of the old joke, how do you boil a frog? Very slowly. If we do not wake up, stand up, and act, we will soon find ourselves cooked. We have a private investigator based in Los Angeles on Clarity tonight to explain the validity of the Swalwell allegations. I am extremely pleased to welcome Mr. Nils Grevellius. Once an agent for the Pinkerton organization, he opened his own practice, Grevellius Detective Services, in 1992. In addition, he is the author of 2 books, Skullduggery and Sub Rosa, both published in 2013, and if I'm not mistaken, soon to be released, The Last Lawman. Welcome to the show, Nils.
It's my sincere pleasure, Mr. Campbell. Thank you for lending me your microphone and your audience.
Oh, it's my pleasure, sir. My pleasure. So I'd like to start out with it. All of this kind of reminds me a little bit of an episode that I saw a long time ago on House of Cards, where they were vetting politicians and they were scheming ways to dilute or distract or completely bury a person's character flaws and so on and so forth, which kind of leads me to what's going on with Swalwell. What do you think?
I think that there's a lot of things afoot with Mr. Swalwell, and there's something that's less than obvious at this point.
Okay.
Do you remember Mr. Swalwell some years ago had a delightful Chinese friend?
Well, I don't know if she was delightful, Niels.
Well, I mean, he wouldn't be alone among Bay Area Democrat politicos. You remember Dai Fi enjoyed the services for 19 years of an intelligence officer of the People's Liberation Army as her personal driver, her chauffeur.
Right.
Okay. Leland Yee, who was a California state senator, had a close consanguineous relationship with a character named Shrimp Boy, who was importing. You think I'm kidding, but I'm not.
Oh, no, I don't think you're kidding. It's too bizarre to not be kidding about this, right?
Well, Shrimp Boy was bringing in fully automatic AK-47s for his broheims around the Bay Area, and Leland Yee knew it. Okay, so there's a lot of things afoot here. Now, I hearken back to Fang Fang because over the last, 12 months or so, Eric Swalwell has been characteristically voluble about the Epstein files, talking quite a bit about Epstein this and Epstein that, something that didn't seem to occupy much of his thoughts or time or activism when Brandon was allegedly president of this country. David?
No.
He didn't say a word.
No, well, nobody else. Yeah, nobody else did either, Neil. No, I mean, nobody said a word really, right?
Right. So he wants full transparency of the Epstein files, and he keeps saying on X and Facebook and, Blue Sky and all the other venues that voluble Democrats go on about wanting transparency. And so a young man named Kash Patel offered him a little bit of transparency. He said, yeah, how about it? We like transparency too. We're going to open up the Fang Fang files. That was 3.5 weeks ago, David. And instantaneously, Eric Swalwell lost all of his interest in transparency and had his lawyers send a cease and desist letter to our Department of Justice demanding that Kash Patel stand down from his mission of transparency on the Fang Fang files, saying that this would be remarkably harmful and that he had done absolutely nothing wrong vis-a-vis Fang Fang. And your audience should know that Fang Fang is a relatively attractive Asian female, an intelligence officer in the People's Liberation Army again, which is pretty amazing considering how close she was to Eric Swalwell. And I think Eric Swalwell said quite a bit when Trump was up on charges for allegedly looking for a quid pro quo in Ukraine and all of this other stuff. He was very voluble. That letter goes from his attorney to the FBI, and 4 days later, the first of these allegations against Swalwell suddenly
pop up,
clears the logjam of the Democrat cult. And it's amazing because the Democrat cult has a tendency to pretend as if these things never happened. Remember when Tara Reid made an accusation that Brandon had not just forced himself with a kiss, but had reached inside her trousers, and under the California Penal Code, that's called rape by foreign object. To do what he did to her or what she said that he did. And every Democrat in the world drove his getaway car, unless I'm mistaken, David. Didn't our trusted shit-gibbon political media drive his getaway car?
Oh, absolutely. They've been driving it for years.
Right.
They've been driving it for years. And that's one of my questions, is this intense cover-up. And I don't want my audience to think that I'm just boxing the Democrats' ears, because the Republicans are up to their damn eyeballs in this crap too. Not this what we're talking about specifically, but they've got their own little shticks that they're doing.
Their own peccadillos.
Yeah, their own little peccadillos, exactly. But to stay on Swalwell's topic, from what I understand, Gallegos come out. And he came out when the allegations hit and said, "Oh no, this guy is a choir boy. He turns. There's nothing in his character that would document all of this." Now Gallego is kind of caught over the chasm as well for spewing a bunch of crap that he knew was a lie. Then who was the other individual? Cabrera came out today and was, going, well, I didn't know anything about this.
None of them knew anything ever. And it's the most amazing process in the world. Just a couple of weeks ago, they did this to Cesar Chavez. And I think arguably Cesar Chavez is more defensible than Eric Swalwell. They didn't defend Cesar Chavez. The New York Times does their in-depth 19-page article raking the man over the coals. Within 18 hours, they had men in boiler suits with power washers and jackhammers to remove Cesar Chavez from the kindergarten, from the street signs, from everything. There is no more Cesar Chavez. He's been disappeared, according to the power needs of the Democrat cult. And I can trace that back to him using the big U word to characterize illegal aliens and having the United Farm Workers shut them out of the fields in Calexico. He didn't want illegal aliens competing for American jobs. Cesar Chavez was an American. So he became politically inconvenient to their current immigration narrative, or the illegal alien narrative.
Yeah, I was going to say their other topic.
Their other power agenda.
Right.
The other people complicit in this, of course, are the people who, when their side is in power, they are in power. And when their side is out of power, they lay siege to the other side.
Yeah.
And that would be the Fourth Estate, our lovely political media. They knew about this. They knew about these accusations. They sat on these things. And at the moment it was signaled to them that Swalwell could do lasting damage to the Democrat cult, to their platform, to their brand, to their marketing, because they don't have politics, they have marketing, and the media markets them. They threw him overboard like a freshly laid turd in a canoe on a river. That's what they did. They threw him overboard, and they signaled to him that it was over, that he gets no lifeline of any kind. Bill Clinton arguably did every single thing that Eric Swalwell has done. Maybe his Chinese spy was a male that he slept with. Who knows? Bill Clinton gave the Chinese military pretty much everything they wanted in terms of rocket telemetry through, what was that outfit, Loral Electro-Optical back in the 90s?
Exactly.
There's a station on Holstead Street in Pasadena, California. I think it's the same company. Anyway, so there we go. They're very selective in their outrage, David. When it's time, they will do away with someone. Sometimes they have to have fake accusers. I mean, look at E. Jean Carroll. She appears to be fake in her accusation. Look at Debbie Ramirez and Blasey Ford and Julie Swetnick, the women raising the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. They're always happy to take one for the team. Some gyno warrior will step up and pretend as if something occurred. But I think all of these allegations are as serious as a search warrant, David. I think he really did all of this stuff. Because his essential character is that of a man who does this sort of thing.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask, that this pile of manure must have gotten to the point where even the corporate media couldn't continue to cover it up. And to your point,
David, I'll back up, back to the Fang Fang files. There's something in the Fang Fang files contextually that is harmful to Gavin Newsom, to Nancy Pelosi,
the whole DNC,
to Javier Baccaria. Think of all the Bay Area Democrats who probably have some of Fang Fang's love juice on their lapels or skirts or whatever. Okay, that's what I attribute it to. The media doesn't care about sexual assault unless, I mean, it's a cryptocurrency for them. It's kryptonite. We're gonna introduce this, and David Campbell is done. Nils Grevellius is done. So that's what I think this is.
Well, Nils, what about the whole Me Too movement? I mean, women in general, not just Democrats, there should be an outrage. There should have been an outrage at the beginning, right? But I think
feminism in this country, post Susan B. Anthony, is little more than one more Marxist cadre, David.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
All right. So the National Organization for Women
ostensibly
exists to protect the lives, the rights, everything of women, correct? So Bill Clinton is credibly accused not just of sex harassment, but of rape and serial abuse and that sort of thing. And so they made a conscious decision to go with infanticide. That infanticide is the one thing that they will protect. If feminism was actually what feminism is disguised as, Hillary Clinton would have been encouraged to leave Bill Clinton, to walk out of the White House in 1998 when the lab came back with the stain on the blue dress. And if she was smart, everybody tells us how smart she is. She's shrewd like a rat is shrewd, but she is not smart, David. If she was smart, she'd have walked out. She'd have never said anything about Bill Clinton ever again. She'd have taken up an apartment across the street from the White House and launched her campaign for president in 1999 to run in 2000. She'd have been the most heroic aggrieved woman in the history of heroic aggrieved women, and she would have been elevated to the presidency in 2000. Bush, all the other guys, Dan Quayle, all the guys who ran in 2000, none of them would have stood a chance against her.
No.
But instead, she decided to stay and take one for the team and pretend as if she was happy with Bill Clinton and all of this. So when feminists circled the wagon around Bill Clinton, they cashed in what little bit of credibility they still had. And then the last veneer of it, the last skin of credibility on top of this, was their treatment of Sarah Palin in 2008.
Yep.
If feminism was feminism, women across the political spectrum would have said, you can talk about the issues all you like, but when you go after her for being a woman in politics, that's completely off the table. Well, they all joined in with it. They savaged her, right? The only liberal female I saw or heard defend Sarah Palin in 2008 from some horrendous, ugly things that they said about her that were completely unnecessary to American politics was Geraldine Ferraro. God bless her memory. She was the only one of them with the integrity to stand up and say that this was wrong. To go about this way was wrong. It's okay to disagree with her stance on infanticide or jobs, the job site for women, that sort of thing. Sarah Palin took risks. She was a partner in a fishing enterprise with her husband, Todd. She was, if she was a Democrat, they'd trot her out like Ann Richards from the state of Texas with the twangy voice and everything. They'd call her the most authentic Democrat female in the history of Democrat females, but instead they savaged her.
Well, the other problem that I think she had was she was intelligent and she was attractive. And that, right, being intelligent and attractive and accomplished automatically makes her the number one on the hit parade, right, to go after.
Maybe, but there have been a few Democrat women who were attractive. When she was young, Nancy Pelosi was very attractive. Don't kid yourself. She really was. It's much rarer on that side, and it's becoming increasingly rare, mostly because they don't know what a woman is over there. I mean,
they can't define it.
Their idea of rugged individualism is Lena Dunham, for crying out loud.
Exactly.
So, she was attractive, but if she were a Democrat, they'd have trotted her out as the second coming of Mary Magdalene. That's how here she is. She's risked everything to lead in this country. How dare you gainsay her,
Right.
So that's where feminism lost its bite. And the only way that they could maintain any kind of power or control over things, you mentioned it at the very beginning of your podcast or your broadcast here, David, is with top to bottom control of social media, of print media, of broadcast media. You lose your job, you lose your scholarship if you say anything that crosses the line. I've come to call politically correct. I don't call it that. I call it vanilla Sharia. It's Sharia law for flabby white people who don't believe in God, okay? That's what it is. It's ruthlessly enforced. And the gate swings in one direction, and it is in the needs of leftist power. It's dialectic Leninism. Vladimir Ilyich Lenin would recognize vanilla Sharia for what it was. He would stroke his chin whiskers, and he would tell them how wise they were, okay? So I'm going to point out, they have lost a lot of control over the socials since 2022, 2023.
Yeah.
I was permanently banned from Facebook. My Twitter account, I couldn't post anything on it, and I didn't have any explanation as to why. I was banned from Facebook for stochastic terrorism, which is their rubric for words or violence, and the people maintaining the list of what the violent words are were the same people paying the Patriot Fund and Nick Fuentes and all of these other guys, all of these other agents of the left disguised as agents of the right, meaning the Southern Poverty Law Center and probably a few other organs of the Marxist left. Without tax dollars, these organizations would have far less power. There'd be far less Marxist organization in our institutions and on the streets without tax dollars funding it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
They hate to compete. They don't want to innovate.
They
They
can't
they don't want to
compete.
make a product. They don't want to have to render a service to the American public.
Niels, they can't compete. That's the problem.
Right.
That is the problem. And so my question is, and now Southern poverty is in the very beginnings, and it's going to be interesting to see if they actually take this forward about, the prosec. I think everybody's getting sick and tired of the lack of accountability around this stuff. And it confuses and aggravates me that the public is so naive. I mean, they should literally be in the streets with pitchforks for some of this stuff.
David, they know only what they're supposed to know.
Yeah, I know.
Think about it. I mean, they launched a psyop in this country. Let me give you a taste of the nexus of this whole thing.
Okay.
I hearken when the internet was robust and fully developed and cable news was fully developed, there was an event in Seattle, I think in 1999 or 2000, and it was the World Trade Organization. And back then, the militant left hated globalism. They hated it. They hated the World Trade Organization, even though the Chinese had been admitted. And there was this big WTO conference in Seattle. And the Comintern came from all over the world to do battle on the streets of Seattle. And there were water cannons and lesbians in burlap sacks and people with purple hair throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails and all of this. And when it was all done and over with, suddenly, within 6 weeks, they no longer hated globalism and the WTO. And it's because the various members of the WTO started paying off like a slot machine to all the hard left organizers. They paid the blackmail. They were extorted. And from that moment forward, we started moving toward 9/11. We started moving toward the Paul Wellstone Funeral Memorial. You remember that?
Yes, I
Where
do.
suddenly nobody is polite. The Civility Caucus of the Democrat cult showed up for his funeral and screamed and yelled at the few Republicans who liked him and respected him enough to attend the man's memorial. And that was done reflexively. Okay, we had Florida in 2000. You remember David Boies and Larry Tribe represented Albert Gore. It's so weird. Neither Boies nor Tribe didn't have lost their licenses to practice law like John Eastman lost his license. It's very strange to me, David. Okay, so if you look at it, we have been in a continuous psyop of one sort or another. Okay, I think that the primary funding mechanism for a lot of this was USAID. I think that they were exactly correct to cancel all of this USAID money. Look at the people who are complaining about it. I think USAID was hip deep in Ukraine. I think USAID money was going from our government to Ukraine and back to Southern Poverty Law Center. It would not surprise me if it changed hands a couple of times, but money's fungible. So I think the test case for the elevated PSYOP came with COVID-19.
Yep.
Here
Absolutely.
I'm looking around metropolitan Los Angeles, David, and I'm being told that this horrendous virus is fatal to people who are, at all compromised in any way. And we have 70,000 Americans who are completely compromised, living in the landscaping under the freeway bridges on the streets of Los Angeles, begging, crapping their pants, using fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, anything you could think of. They prostitute themselves, they steal, they do whatever they have to support their drug habit. It's a consequence-free society. It's a socialist utopia here, okay? They catch everything else. They catch the flu, they catch the clap, they catch diphtheria, they catch meningitis, but somehow
COVID didn't touch them. Right.
Those homeless camps did not turn into vast graveyards, okay?
Right.
And
Amazing,
you were
isn't
ordered
it?
to stay home, to mask up. You had to wear your COVID burqa. You were going to have to take a series of injections. There's a lot of medical evidence that they're harmful. There's other medical evidence to say that maybe they aren't. Who knows? Okay, that's not my argument. My argument is they use this as a fulcrum and a lever They moved people in one direction, another direction, that sort of thing. And they made Americans hate each other using this psyop. They destabilized our population as battlefield preparation to take control. Okay.
Well, they not only did they do it domestically,
Internationally.
they did it internationally as well, because you can't tell me that the governor of California is reading the same talking points that the prime minister in England is reading, and the chancellor in Germany and in Canada. Yeah, exactly.
Look what Trudeau did to those truckers who dared to show up in Ottawa to protest. They took their bank accounts, they took their driver's licenses, they put them in jail.
Yeah.
They shut down their cellular telephones, that sort of thing. It's an affront. It's an affront. I have a lot of Canadian family, okay? I hate what that man did. He is execrable, Mr. Campbell. So there we go. There you go. That's an example of a psyop, and we're still in a psyop. They just have less control now than they had 5 years ago.
Yeah, and that's what worries me, Nils, is the Trump persona right now is the only thing that's keeping the dogs barking outside the gates. Because once his term is over, I'm afraid that we're not going to have a strong enough persona in the White House to fight this back. Obviously, the Bushes didn't, as far back as I can remember in politics in this country. All of this crap has been slowly, like I said, boiling the frog. It's been slowly mounting and mounting and mounting. Yeah.
The younger George Bush is a good man who's stupid. The elder George Bush was a bad man who was smart.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so George H.W. Bush was part of the problem.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then Obama was I think that it's interesting, and I think, if truth be known, I think his legitimacy to be the president, being born in this country, was probably one of the best fabricated pieces of intel that you could possibly, because they scrubbed that to the point where nobody could actually nail that down.
Okay, so then that makes people insecure about that, and it gives him strength rather than taking strength away from him.
Right.
But imagine how hurt the golden child was after 8 years of getting a daily tongue bath from our shit-gibbon political media. I apologize for using
no. That's go for it. That's because that's exactly what they are.
They would eat the undigested kernels from his spore, David, every day. Okay. And then at the end of that, he loses to the man who is his most vociferous critic. Trump had to run against Husseino, against the Clinton crime machine and the shit-gibbon political media after defeating the sluggish, lethargic, compromised Republicans who were always happy to operate at the speed of leprosy. The 4-year death for everything, okay? And so he shows them up. He shows them that it was child's play to defeat the Republicans and then go into the lion's den and to break every single rule that they made for him. I have a little more faith than you do, David. I will say why. I think that the younger Republican guys and some of the libertarian voters, but not the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party is just another aspect of Marxism. It's closeted Marxism.
Yeah.
Have absorbed the lesson of Trump, of when they step on you, step on them, never back down. When they give you a rule, break the rule, that sort of thing. I think Vance, I think Rubio, I think Gabbard, I think all of them have absorbed this lesson, and it's not going to leave the DNA of the GOP. If we allow people like Nikki Haley to take control, we will go right back to being the controlled opposition of the Marxists, and I don't want to be that. I won't
No.
put up with it. I think the most destructive aspect within our own group, though, David, are the people who believe the Nick Fuentes line about Israel murdering Charlie Kirk and that Erica Kirk is in bed with him. This is born of paranoia. I understand Tucker's paranoia, and I hope that one day he reels himself back to earth. I know how he became paranoid. He became victim of the psyop. They sent Antifa to his house when he was out of town to terrorize his family. They influenced Fox News, one of the most feckless news organizations on this planet, to fire him because he wouldn't support the Ukraine war, okay? And that drove him over the edge into paranoia. One day, I don't think he's a stupid man.
No.
I think that one day he will be back. I like the man. I don't agree with him right now, though.
No, I don't either, and I'm not entirely sure what the final push was, but something did push Tucker because to me, just listening to him now versus listening to him earlier in his broadcast career, something's radically changed and something happened in that.
It all coincides with the COVID-19 and the Hunter Biden laptop and the Ashley Biden diary and people going to jail for supporting President Trump or for engaging in.
Well, yeah, you've got the whole J6 committee ought to be in prison.
Right. Well, let me point out, Nick Fuentes was in the United States Capitol on January 6th, and he was just about the only one not arrested other than that other guy who was obviously working for the FBI.
Yeah.
And that's what causes me to believe that Nick Fuentes has always been a left-wing psyop. He is an agent of the left, and he openly says not just that he has sex with transvestites, that he is here to divide the right, not the left. He calls himself a collapsitarian, and many of the young men who listen to his stupid podcast call themselves collapsitarians. They want the United States to collapse because they believe they can rebuild it into something else. They're fools. They're morons. And
they're absolutely fools, but
most of them have never sacrificed anything for this country.
Exactly. Yeah. When you sit there and you listen to some of these people, they've never had any skin in the game at all. And to me personally, I think that should be one of the attributes to voting and everything else is that you've done some form of public service, because otherwise what you're getting out of your education, you're not getting any kind of social or civil history or anything else, any social information growing. I mean, you can't stop anybody on the street and ask them who the 16th president of this country was. They wouldn't have a bloody ass clue.
No, and they would resent you for asking them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a form of white supremacy to know who Abraham Lincoln was. And Abraham Lincoln, was a horrible man. He did bad things to people.
He was a horrible man. And just so much bullshit. Your social media footprint, Nils, where can people find your information?
I'm at Detective Nils on X, formerly Twitter. I use Facebook mostly for family now. I was allowed back on Facebook the day before Zuckerturd sat down with Donald Trump after Trump won the 24 election. Suddenly, the dead app on my telephone started blinking, asking me to update, but they had zapped my old account, and so I had to form a new one.
Wow. The new book, The Last Lawman, when is that coming out?
It's available for pre-order right now on Amazon.
Okay.
And it will deliver on the 9th of June. It's my true life memoir, service in the United States Army a little bit. I wasn't a great soldier. I don't take orders well, and I'm not a nice man.
I wouldn't say that. I think you're a terrific man.
Every meal was a banquet. That's what I will say.
Exactly.
I spent a couple of years on the DNC, and I went from being a grunt to being a counterintelligence man. And then worked on the civilian side a bit and got recruited to the Pinkertons in L.A., doing protective work and surveillance and undercover various things, and then ultimately decided I would operate my own version of the Pinkerton service. And people don't know it now, but there would be no FBI or Secret Service but for Alan Pinkerton. In 1854, Pinkerton landed in Chicago. He's from Glasgow, Scotland. He had a good look around Chicago and decided that he would become a detective and that he would protect the public institutions, all for hire, of course. And never accept this thing of, oh, well, you can't do this. You're not an expert. You don't know what the police know. Well, that was bullshit then, and it's bullshit now. Alan Pinkerton was a school teacher prior to becoming a detective. And he made himself into a detective, and he was the best that this country had ever seen prior thereto. So he suppressed a couple of assassination plots against Lincoln during the Civil War. And after the army took over protecting the president was assassinated. The Pinkertons put down the James gang by assassinating Jesse James. That was direct action of the Pinkerton organization. They did what the government would not do to that man. Some people Southern partisans like to lionize Jesse James. There's a lot to lionize. He was a brave man, but he did a lot of bad things to innocent people. So the Pinkertons took the matter in hand and took care of business. They infiltrated communists in the American labor movement in the early 20th century. In the Coeur d'Alenes, they had an undercover man in the Western Federation of Miners contemporaneous with their assassination of the governor of Idaho, Frank Steunenberg. Clarence Darrow got the men who did it acquitted, but Big Bill Haywood, the organizer who bombed Governor Steunenberg, is buried in the Kremlin wall next to John Reed. That's ultimately where that man went, was to the Soviet Union. Okay, so we had in this country a communist insurgency then, and we are in a communist insurgency right now.
Now, absolutely.
If you look up the U.S. Army Special Warfare School's manual on something called LIC, Low Intensity Conflict, you will see that we have every aspect of it. We have a lack of trust in institutions infiltrated by people who use those institutions as a means of waging war on the country rather than doing the bidding of the public. We have institutions that are compromised to the extent that they are daycare for the employees that don't really serve a real function. USAID was sort of 50-50. I'll give you a good example of daycare. The United States Postal Service. Most of what the Postal Service is now, David, is daycare for the people working there. It's healthcare, a pension, that sort of, maybe they work, maybe they don't. I think 18% of their workforce is out on injury or sickness every day of the week. I live in Pasadena, California. This is one of the wealthiest communities in the Western United States. I cannot count on a daily mail delivery to my office, David. It's because they don't care. There's no consequence if they don't do it. You can't even call the post office in my city and have somebody respond. They won't even answer the phone for their own consumer affairs unit. But these are examples, and they're obvious examples. The veterans has been off and on daycare. It's gotten better over the last 10 years, probably because of Donald Trump. But, they hire doctors, nurses, PAs who are narcotics addicts who steal the narcotics, and the veterans lay in their filthy beds and are given saline shots instead of morphine when they're injured, things like that. That happens all the time in veterans care facilities.
Well, sir, I'd like to thank you. It's been an enlightening and a great conversation. We've been speaking to Nils Grevellius, and if you go out to Grevellius Detective Services, you can get his information. And before I leave, though, I'd like to share a verse from John 10:28 through 30, which is, Jesus said, I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish. No one can snatch them out of my hand. My Father who has given them to me is greater than all. No one can snatch them out of my Father's hand. And I and the Father are one. So remember, if you need guidance, take a knee and pray. He will listen.
And in dying, it is that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Exactly. Amen. Thank you, sir. It's been an absolute honor and a privilege.
My sincere pleasure, David. I hope to be on your show again.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to listen to more Clarity from Chaos shows on demand, go to clarityfromchaos.buzzsprout.com or send Dave an email at info@clarityfromchaos.com for information on previous shows. You can also listen to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Twitter, or Google Podcast. Until next time, please remember, It's not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Be well, everyone.